My name is Zach Gima. I'm one of the assistant directors for student chapters at ACS. And let me introduce you to the rest of our panel. We've got Christy Martell here, who's the president of the Penn State chapter. Meredith Kincaid, who's president of the UT Austin chapter. And Aparna Gupta, who's the other assistant director for student chapters. What we've got going on for you today is, so Aparna will give you a brief introduction as to the resources that the national office provides to our chapters. Meredith will talk a little bit about what she's done at UT. They've got a really strong chapter, and she'll talk about how they've been able to keep that up. And Christy's done a really good job at Penn State, restarting a chapter that had been basically inactive, and it's now one of our best chapters. So, Aparna, why don't you start us off?
Sure. So I'm going to stand up a little bit just so I stay awake. Thank you so much for coming to Palo Alto. I know that this is a trip for many of you, and we so appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us here, and also for waking up this early. It really means a lot to us as a student chapter staff. I just wanted to sort of talk a little bit informally with you guys about student chapters as a staff within a part of the larger sort of ACS national team, and sort of how we run, but then also how we can really be of help to you in your day-to-day sort of operations as student chapter leaders. So one of the best things that I think student chapters has to offer is that, we give our leaders a lot of agency to choose the programming that they want to have. So whereas in law school, a lot of your curricula is already decided for you, or you don't get to maybe particularly explore, an area in employment law that you wanted to focus on, or explore some theories further. ACS is a space where you can do that. If you are interested in detention of immigrants, you can go and recruit an ACLU lawyer who can come and talk to your student chapter about that. And it's very, very basic. The programming that each chapter has is very based on the interests of the student leaders within that group. And so I really encourage you, if there are things that you are interested in and want to sort of make connections with your local community, to actually, really think hard about what it is that you want to discuss with your fellow classmates and put those ideas into reality. Like that is something I think that will be, a very tangible learning experience, not just for you, but you will be introducing those ideas to your fellow classmates as well. So I think that would be, that's one of the perks of sort of being through chapter leaders. You get to decide the programming that you get to pitch forth. So really quickly, putting together a successful program, like it was said yesterday, is not rocket science, but it does take a little bit of planning. And to the extent that you can encourage your board members, if they're not already members, but taking this information back to your campuses, is to meet pretty regularly, whether it's through email, whether it's through, Skyping or whatever, because everybody cannot meet at the same time. But, I think that communications are now, so easy to sort of access different people's schedules at different times. So I really think having a healthy board dialogue and encouraging that, and, especially for folks who are presidents of their board, asking for opinions from one else, asking for opinions from two else, getting people engaged, really making them feel like they're a part of this board will sort of help you in your work as well. In terms of what we can do, I just want to give you a little bit of a background on our website. Most of you have accessed our website, but if you haven't, I want to do a quick walkthrough. So when you go to the main ACS webpage, which is acslaw.org, this is the screen you'll see. We have a separate student chapters website, which you access by going here into chapters, and then on the left, you'll see student chapters. And so 2 clicks and you're at the student chapters website. This website will give you pretty much everything you need to know to run a successful student chapter. So if you have not shared this with your members, please go ahead and do that. It has our most sort of updated information, things that are going on, priorities at ACS International, but then also we feature a regular student chapter of the week. I guess this past week was St. Louis University. And we like to sort of this place to be a gathering ground for our sort of materials. So on the left, you'll find a bar or margin, which includes the model calendar, a checklist for your faculty advisors. Sometimes faculty advisors are like, oh, we publish 2 newsletters which consolidate much of the information on this website into newsletter form. And we have a very important chapter leader update form. So anytime there's a change in your board or a new board, we need to have this information so we can keep in touch with presidents and treasurers and sort of officers of your board. Every chapter has a login. If you don't have a login, email myself or Gideon or campus at acslaw.org, our generic mailbox that all of us check. We will set you up with that information, but you need the login to request funding. And post events as well. So you want to make sure you have a login and that you talk to whoever, whether it's yourself or the person in your chapter that sort of handles funding, is very familiar with this process. And again, we're happy to schedule a call and walk them through the steps so that it's not daunting or difficult for people to request funding from ACS National. Once you request funding, so you'll get to here, the student chapter funding and reimbursement page. Basically, this page will outline like step by step what you need to do to get funding from us. Essentially, you fill out a form, we get the request, we approve it in full, in part, ask you to change some things if they need to be changed. We'll let you know how much is approved for this event, $200 for pizza or whatever it is. And then you go and purchase the pizza, send us the receipts along with the form, and you will get a check in the mail. That's sort of how funding works, and this describes it in greater detail. We have a quick model calendar, which for new chapters I think is really helpful because new chapters don't have the luxury of knowing sort of how ACS works a lot of times. And so this chapter gives you ideas of things that have worked for other new chapters. Because a lot of times, you might, like, for example, I'm going to call out Nate, who is he's the new chapter member of our American University ACS chapter. There's lots of law schools in DC. Many of them are not new. They've been around for a while. So for him to, think through how to have events, this model calendar serves as a great place, not just for new, but also existing chapters, that it'll tell you this is what other student chapters are doing. You want to celebrate the anniversary of the Constitution, it falls on September 17th. If you want to it just gives you like some ideas to think through if you are looking for ideas. So I definitely encourage you to use that. One of the other things, sometimes it can be really hard to plan a program on a specific issue. And we, obviously, Zach, me, Zanel, and Gideon can sort of help you think through speakers, but we also have this great programs team at National that is sort of a think tank of ideas, and they think about experts and scholars who think about different policy issues. And every semester for us, for our students, they publish a program guide where they pick an issue area and they think through who would be good to speak to our student chapters. This year it happens to be Gideon and indigent defense. And so if you go to the program guide page, you can see sort of, and what they do, what this team does for us, it's basically a program in a box, and it'll walk you through the steps of having a program on indigent defense. You can go click the program guide portion of it, and it'll summarize the issue for you. So if you're unfamiliar with indigent defense, it'll give you a quick summary of the issue. And then what's better is that it'll give you a speakers list, and which includes the location of the speaker, where they work, their names, obviously, and what their focus is. And you can easily sort of access, speakers in your area and put those events, on in your school. That's, it makes it easier for students. We want to make it as easy for you as possible to have events. And this is obviously just for this year, but like we have program guides on immigration, national security. So whatever issue that you are interested in doing, check out our past program guides. And these speakers have, agreed to speak to our student chapters, provided that their scheduling works out. So definitely, keep that in mind. For those of you in larger cities, we have a couple of different docs of, one of them is visiting professors that are going to be in your area. And so you definitely want to check that out. If Erwin Chemerinsky is teaching in your city and you don't know about it, it's a real shame. So we have that doc for you so you can invite professors in your area to come and speak. We also have a list of conferences that are happening annually, and you can sort of poach speakers from these conferences because a lot of times, it's hard to ask someone to come from the East Coast to the West Coast or the West Coast to the East Coast. And so chances are, if they're in town for something else, they will come and speak to your chapter. And I think that is a great opportunity for you to get a diversity of speakers, not terms of, I know yesterday at the executive session, you heard a lot about career and networking and, how you can use sort of BCS to bring your career forward. There's two things I want to plug from the website. The first is your career interest form. Like Zach mentioned, we use this information very, very forcefully. And if we are able to we can't dream up what it is that you're interested in. But if you let us know and we see a job that matches you, we will send that your way, and we'll pair you up with mentors that oftentimes are looking for students interested in the same issues. And the other thing I want to say is that there's a summer list on this website where you let us know where you're going to be in the summer. For example, if any of you are going to be in DC, we have tons of events that ACS students can get involved in. We want to plug you into those events so that it's not just a summer without ACS. You can actually carry it through the summer. The last thing I'm going to say before I turn it over to these great student leaders is that a strong student chapter really requires strong student leaders. And I think that all of you are here today is a testament to how much you believe in ACS. But I think that leadership really, this is ACS student chapter is a place where you can practice that leadership before you become a lawyer. You can set a goal to have a speaker. You can think about the issues that matter to you. You can collaborate with other people. And these are chances that you might get through a clinic in law school, but you don't get in your day-to-day law school classrooms to speak about issues, to follow up with experts. And this is a place where you can practice that and really harness that, because when you get into your practice area and you don't follow up on an email and you don't sort of, you don't have the practice of doing that or introducing yourself and the issues that are important to you, it can be really daunting. So I encourage you really to collaborate with other people on your board and really encourage them to help you build this chapter. Doesn't have to fall on you by yourself, but really get the synergy there between the different people that you work with. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us.
Thank you very much, Aparna. Now I'd like to talk to Christy for a little bit. As I mentioned before, she's the president of our Penn State chapter. And when she took over, it was a struggling chapter, and it's now one of our strongest. And so, Christy, I'd like to ask you kind of to describe how the chapter was when you started, and then kind of where you are now.
Sure. So, as Zach mentioned, it was a very inauspicious beginning, to say the least. There was a previous chapter. They did exist. And I was told coming in that there's no way we could get speakers to come to Central Pennsylvania. Nobody would fund any of our events. And even if we could overcome these first two hurdles, then no students would attend this event. So I was pretty bummed out. But I like underdogs, right? And so suddenly I was cheering for myself, saying, how can I overcome this underdog status that our chapter has? And when Zach asked me, I thought, gosh, how did we do this? And the first thing that came to mind was audacity. And I just went, you know what? I'm not going to take no. And I'm not going to not ask speakers because we live in Central Pennsylvania. And I'm not going to not ask people for money because money is all over the place. There are so many different administrative components of each law school that have secret little money funds, and they want to support, they want to support student organizations. They do. So I just started doing those things that seemed impossible when I first came in. And so I would ask speakers, I would just shoot an email to somebody who I'd never spoken with, I had no connection with, but who I'd researched a lot on the web. And I'd say, I'm choosing you very specifically to speak about this very special event that my organization is holding. It's 3 months from now. Would you be willing to come to Central Pennsylvania for this very special event? And all of your costs will be covered. Of course, I hadn't figured out how to do that yet, but I knew that I could figure it out. So, you just flatter these people into like, oh my gosh, this person has reached out very specifically to me. And I got a lot of yeses, more yeses than I received no responses or no's from. In fact, so this was very encouraging. And then second, I found out about all these different sources of funding. And of course, ACS National was one of those, but also within my school, the SBA has funds sitting around. We also have this thing called the Speakers Trust Fund. And I don't know if every school has one, but we have one. And they've got like 50 grand sitting around. And at the close of every year, they've got 40 grand of it still sitting around. And I think we should ask them for some money. And Career Services offices had money, and the dean has money. And so I started just kind of doing a round robin where I'd ask hey, would you like to support this very special event that's planned in 3 months? I've already got the speaker flying in from California to do this. And I'd get more yeses than nos. And then finally, I come from a background in advertising, luckily, so publicizing the event was the fun part. And when I get 60 people to show up, I think like, what? We went from nobody will show up to 60 kids who will spend their lunch hour with us. And so I was very encouraged after just a couple of successful events, and I thought, this is totally doable. This is totally doable. So that's kind of where we are now, and I'll stop and let you.
No, that's good. And the other thing I kind of want to know is what specific events were the most successful? What do you think made people excited about ACS? And then how did that kind of leap forward into your future events?
Our first sort of big bang event was called Wrong Place, Wrong Time, Wrong Verdict. And it was all about wrongful convictions. I was turned on to this idea because I worked for the Montana Innocence Project, and I was really interested in why do wrongful convictions happen? What's the science and the psychology behind wrongful convictions? And I thought, I bet lots of students come to school, they come to law school because they care about things like this. And this is right up ACS's alley. This is kind of one of those very specific issue areas that I think they support. And it turns out that I was right. I got the legal director of the Pennsylvania Innocence Project to come in and speak. She put on a fabulous event. It was full of like real hard facts and statistics, and she had case studies of specific individuals whose cases she had worked on. She listed specific people who had been wrongfully convicted and who had been exonerated. And people were like, they were up out of their seats. They were so excited by the end of that event. And so that was like our big bang. And I thought, gosh, people really like this. And I think the same things that make Nancy Grace shows interesting to my mom, right? It's like murder and, just like the visceral stuff that interests people. It interests law students. We're people too, right? It interests law students too. We're just a little geekier about it. So I think choosing that kind of event that really, why did people come here? That's what brings people in.
Great. Now I'd like to talk to Meredith a bit, and as I mentioned before, she's the president of our UT Austin chapter, and they've been strong for a while now. And having a strong chapter, I think, kind of represents its own challenges in making sure you maintain that strength. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your chapter and kind of where you guys are now and what your strategies are for staying so strong?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Like Zach said, I think have had a strong chapter, at least since I've been in law school. I'm a 3L now. And I think I've seen some transition in our program. I think we went sort of from my 1L year, we had mostly professors sort of speak, and we've, I think, kind of transitioned into more practitioners. But we still have, our fair share of professors and try to utilize the resources that we have available. I think one really important part about sort of maintaining momentum and keeping some sort of institutional knowledge is to make sure you have a good mix of class years on your board. So like we try and recruit 1L representatives every year. So, that helps with several things. It helps sort of publicize. They make announcements in their big sections. When we create a Facebook event, which we do for all of our events, we make sure that we have various 1Ls, 2Ls, 3Ls on the board, and everybody invites all of their friends. So we end up inviting the vast majority of UT, and they hear about it not only through Facebook, but we've got beautiful posters. John has created this whole branding scheme for us this year, which has been awesome. And so they hear about our events in multiple ways, and I think particularly sort of tapping into the key leaders in each class is really key to that. I also think collaborating with certainly other student organizations, it just makes it easier for everyone, whether it's like we often pair up with our Public Interest Law Association. We also often do a lot of stuff with our Texas Journal on Civil Liberties and Civil Rights. We also have an institute within the school. It's just the William Wayne Justice Center. So they often have a lot of money. So if we sort of pair up, then I think we're able to do more. We're able to stretch funds further, which has been really helpful. And also just, again, like getting the word out about our events. People actually I think a lot of people come to law school, maybe they've heard of the Federalist Society, but they haven't necessarily heard of the American Constitution Society, which makes sense. They're a much younger organization. But I think they're quickly drawn once they realize, it's just a very broad, it can encompass any kind of sort of interest area that you individually have. And that's been really good. We try and particularly do some things with our local lawyer chapter. So Callie is actually our lawyer chapter liaison and mentor coordinator, and she's done a fabulous job this year. We have several happy hours throughout the year. Many of us have gotten internships and jobs through sort of connections that we've made there, which is awesome. And sort of, the ideal that you might talk about, but it actually happens for us. And I think it, could happen anywhere where you've got sort of a city with a lot of opportunities, maybe not necessarily working for that individual lawyer, although we've had that happen too, but even just sort of connections and people that they know within town. We also, our mentorship program, I think, is something that I know Callie spent a lot of time on, sort of really trying to boil down sort of interests of students with interests of attorneys and do a strong match there. I know that takes a fair amount of time and effort, but she's done a great job, and I think that's been something that's been really fulfilling for both students and attorneys. And really in terms of trying to get, I think our most popular events and events that have made the biggest impact in the community have been things that are just really timely. So you look around in the news, it's not hard to see, there's tons of stuff out in the news about Roe v. Wade at 40. And now we've got Gideon at 50, there's every year there's sort of interesting cases that are going before the Supreme Court, or, interesting anniversaries that are in the year, or, sort of annual things that come up every year, like Constitution Day. Some things that are going to be happening, and just, I think, sort of capitalizing on that already, national publicity about a particular issue is really good about, in terms of getting people out and interested in knowing who you are. So.
Thank you for that. I think now we can open the floor for questions. This session is being videotaped, so if you could actually come down and talk into the mic if you've got a question, that way we can have it recorded. I've got some questions in case you guys don't. And this is for both of you. So to what extent do you guys use your faculty advisor and other faculty on campus to help you put on your events and otherwise run your chapter?
So our faculty advisor, I'm so blessed to have this faculty advisor. She was actually selected by the board before me. So not everything was against me, luckily. This lady, her name is Kit Kinports, and she was a clerk to Supreme Court Justice Blackmun. And so she has such insight into watching this justice develop from a more conservative justice into one of the more liberal. She teaches a Supreme Court seminar class, and she teaches with a very liberal bent criminal procedure. So from having her criminal procedure class, I knew this lady was she's perfect for our club. She has been absolutely instrumental. When I sit down and just have a brainstorming session with her, she's got 10 names. She goes, oh, this event, you like that idea? Great, I know 3 people for that. And she'll every event idea that I have, she's got 3 people who she thinks she could personally reach out to, or she gives to me to reach out to. So she's been instrumental, absolutely.
Sorry, before we go to Meredith, how often do you meet with her? How often do you email her and that sort of thing?
It's not regular. I try to do it maybe at the beginning of every semester. That's as regular as it gets. But whenever I have an idea, she's open, and she's a good sounding board, and she's open to me emailing her, calling her, sitting down in her office with her. So we have a very familial and collegial relationship.
That's good.
So we had kind of an odd situation with our faculty advisors. Coming in, we had had a faculty advisor who teaches property. She's great. I like her a lot, but she's sort of not very involved usually she teaches our Supreme Court clinic, but it was just, I remember when I found out that she was our faculty advisor as a 2L when I really was on the sort of exec board, it was just odd to me. And then it made, National actually coordinates a lot with a constitutional law scholar at UT, and we'd already been working with him in a number of different contexts, and we all sort of knew him, and so it seemed like he would be sort of the more obvious choice for that. But we didn't want to sort of burn any bridges, so we've sort of named them both as our faculty advisor, but we really just kind of use the latter. But he's been great. We don't meet with him on a very regular basis. I usually touch base with him at the beginning of the year, and usually the second semester as well. But he's good if like we had an issue come up where the lawyer chapter wanted us to help recruit professors to speak at their monthly luncheons. So like we met with Callie met with Professor Forbath and just sort of bounce ideas about how to do that, whether he thought that professors would be willing to do that, and sort of how we could go about that well. So he's always happy to meet with us, which has been great. And I think all professors are they're there in part at least because they kind of like to teach, and some of them more than others. But I think they like to be helpful. I think they like to feel like they can use their connections in a way that is helpful to you. So I would definitely advise you to maximize that.
Can I actually jump back to two things that Meredith said, or do you want to?
Oh, no, of course.
Charge ahead. Yeah. Okay. So I want to underscore something that she mentioned, which was connecting with other student organization leaders and co-sponsoring events with them. I will say that at least 60% of our events, and we hold between 2 to 3 events per month, 60% of them are co-sponsored with at least one other student organization. Now, how this started was, it was like the first week of school, and suddenly I had this fledgling chapter, and I went up to other student organization leaders, shake their hand, and I'd say, "Hi, I'm the president of this kind of a fledgling organization, and what's important to your club this semester?" And they'd say, "Gosh, I'm really upset about the voter ID laws." I'd say, "God, you know what? That's important to us too, actually. And we've got $50. Do you have $50? And I'd say, yeah, that's all we have. And I'd say, great, well, let's put our $50 together and let's hold an event together. We'll divide the labor, and the human resources that are necessary, and we'll multiply the number of people who will come, because now we have 2 organizations coming together, at least 2. So we did this with the Latino and Latina Law Association. We did this with the Public Interest Law Fund group. They were really awesome. We did this with the Federalist Society. We did this with every group that would shake my hand and talk to me about what was important to them. It was incredible. And once we had at least one event with each of these organizations running, we had some great credibility. We had credibility not only with another organization, but administrators of the law school were watching. And soon, events started coming to us. I would literally receive an email in my box. It would say, "We have a speaker. They want to come to our school. Will you host them? We will fund it." Yeah. And what do you say? "Oh, I'll ask my e-board and see if we can fit it in," right? Yeah, absolutely. So we had an author of a book come in from California. Her name is Nancy Mullane, and she was writing about these 5 guys who had finished their terms in prison for murder. And what did they do when they got out of prison? How did they cope with being a person who had no job history, who had never had a driver's license before, who had a criminal conviction for murder on their record? How did they go about getting a job and living and finding a place to live and a landlord that would let them live there? She was fascinating. That was another sort of big hit for us. So that event came to me. I didn't even have to ask her. And she, like I said, she came all the way from California. So connectivity with these other student organizations is so critical and is so positive for your group. And I felt like, here's the other thing. So creativity. I think that creativity is really important. And it takes 60 seconds to think of a more interesting food to serve than pizza and a 2-liter bottle of soda, right? And law students, I never want to walk into another room with a pepperoni pizza and Mountain Dew. That's the last thing I want to go to. So don't serve it at your event, right? I always try to buy higher quality food and lesser quantities of it. Because if I'm dumping it out in the hallway when it's left over, you're saying thanks to all of you folks who didn't come to my event, right? So I serve high quality hors d'oeuvres when we have networking events. I'm serious. This is the little stuff that makes a difference, I think, to a student organization. It makes people want to come. I serve Dairy Queen ice cream cake when we're throwing an Alice Paul birthday event. So just be creative about the little things about your events. And I think that it really appeals to law students because we're not the average bear, right?
So you bring up a good point about things that appeal to law students, and one of those is social events. I know sometimes chapters are nervous about either asking us for funds for social activities or even putting them on. but that's definitely something that we encourage all of our chapters to do. Networking is important. You can use these events to network with attorneys in the area, but also your peer group is an important relationship to develop. So, Meredith, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about some of the social events that you guys have had, either with lawyer chapters or even just amongst yourselves.
Yeah, like I said, we do have happy hours with the local lawyer chapter. We're sort of expanding this semester and trying out happy hours that will be with sort of other, public interest law associations or various other sort of progressive student organizations. Last semester we had a debate watching party. So this was at like a recent grad. It could have been at one of our houses, and we just had like 15 people. It was a potluck. It was great. Like we had a really good time. It wasn't just ACS people who came, so it was nice to meet new people, and we just had a really good time. I think getting creative and yes, I think students are always inclined to come where the free food is, but I think also there's a lot of different ways to sort of to get there and to do things that are interesting to students that aren't just like someone talking at you for an hour.
Can I say a networking
Of
one?
course, yeah.
Sorry. Oh my gosh, I have a question from the audience.
Yeah.
Actually, just going to add.
Actually, sorry, would you mind coming up to the mic?
Okay, very short.
That's okay.
So I was just going to add that the idea for the debate watching potluck came from one of the people in the lawyer chapter. So that's another reason that if you can make connections with the lawyer chapter, it's really helpful because they have like creative ideas that like we might not necessarily think of ourselves. So, okay.
And if you need help making those connections, let us know. We will connect you.
Oh, so my networking thing was we had the Federalist Society, and like I love the Federalist Society at my school, right? I know that they're supposed to be sort of like our I've been told that they're our opposite. Like I love these guys; they're great. So what I thought I would do is instead of like where we're butting heads, I thought let's do something we can all agree on. Let's throw a party about the repeal of prohibition, which happened in December. It happened in December, right? That's a constitutional issue. That totally counts. So in December, it was the 79th anniversary of the repeal of prohibition. We threw a great big party at the best bar in town, and so many people came, and it was such a great networking opportunity with people who were supposed to be our opposites, but we're all high-fiving and like having a great time. So like I said, creativity, right? Like there are so many fun opportunities to do things. It doesn't all have to be academic, constitutional interpretation, that sort of thing. There are so many fun and interesting things to do.
And to be clear, we actually do, sometimes we'll get questions like, will you fund us to go to, put a tab on a bar or something? And like, we will definitely do all this within reason. So don't be shy about that. We do obviously want you to do substantive events and everything like that. But, if once a semester or once a year, you guys want to do something, off campus or, do get a tab at a bar or get appetizers or something. Don't be shy about that. We understand this is an important part of your law school experience and your networking, learning how to network and things like that. So don't be shy about that and don't feel like you can't do that.
Yeah, I think just sort of what he said exactly. I think a lot of times like you might have questions like, oh, we've never done something like that. I'm not even sure that National would really go for that, but it's so easy to just ask. I mean, like Aparna's, I can't even imagine how many emails for me over the course of the year, and but they're so quick. They're really quick to respond and really helpful. So like even if it may not necessarily fit within their certain parameters, they'll always try to find a way to make it work, which is really great.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Yeah, comment. And sorry to make you use the mic. But.
So I'm wondering about your relationships with your attorney chapters because I'm from Indiana, and we're in Bloomington. The closest attorney chapter is Indianapolis, which is just a different market, and we don't really interact with them, and they're not very strong. So, and I know we can't like create an attorney chapter for them. So I don't know how to encourage them to start one or get involved or, your experience with that. So.
I can answer that a little bit. I know because you each have different experiences. So every law school will have a little bit of different experience with the lawyer chapter around them, or not so much around them as we don't really have anything in central Pennsylvania. But one things you can do is reach out to us, and we can do a membership poll for lawyers that are in your area. Now, it may be difficult to get them to actually start a lawyer chapter, but if there's one person who's interested in ACS and lives around you, it's at least worth reaching out to that person and seeing, maybe they are interested in starting a lawyer chapter. Maybe they didn't realize that the student chapter was as strong as it is. And Indiana is another one of our really strong chapters. Or maybe just one person will make one connection with one of your students, and it'll be a big help to them. So that's one thing you can do if your lawyer chapter around you isn't that strong. The other thing you can do is, I know Adam Moorfield, who will speak to you guys all later. He was our University of Nebraska Lincoln student chapter president, and basically his 3L year, he decided to simultaneously start the lawyer chapter. That's not something that everybody can do and has the time for, and the connections for. But if you guys are interested, we know it's possible, and we'd love to have that happen. Aparna, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I was just going to add, so, in the same way, yes, like ideally we would have lawyer chapters in every city that you guys are in. But one thing, we do a couple of things that sort of try to get you there, especially for cities that we don't have a chapter in. One is, for each of your schools, we have gone back 10 years, or 11 years, I guess, since our existence, and looked up every former chapter leader. So we have people from UT Austin that were involved in like 1993. Is that 10 years ago?
2003.
Oh yeah, sorry, 2003. You're right. Sorry, no math. We have people, and they are now in their practice, chances are, if they were a student chapter leader, they're going to want to come and talk to your school. And these people are doing really interesting things. They're at DOJ, they're at firms in your city, they're at nonprofits in your city. And every semester, we will send it to the presidents of your student chapter, a list of alums from your school. And that really is your lawyer chapter, especially if they're in your city. You don't need to have a formal organization. Yes, it helps, but I think that, making those connections starts in law school. And then, once you are out, you can actually start holding impromptu happy hours. And that's really how lawyer chapters sometimes start, is a group of friends that are like, oh, we're going to do this together. And so we'll definitely send those out. And the other thing we also have, which some of you probably do not know, is we have a list of judges who have hired ACS clerks, so former chapter leaders that were then hired on by judges. And so we, again, share that information at the beginning of the semester with our chapter presidents to share it with their boards. And so that's another resource that sometimes lawyer chapters would provide to you. But for those students who don't have access to a local lawyer chapter, you should definitely reach out to ACS National, and we will do our very, very best to get you paired up with lawyers in your area, so you don't feel like you're not getting all that you can.
We're running up against the clock here now. We could squeeze one question if everyone's got any. Otherwise, we can wrap up and head to the next session. Anybody with any other questions?
Really quick, we didn't do this at the beginning. Can we just go around the room and say your name and which chapter you're from, so that we can also remember each other?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jeff Nicolay. I'm from the Rutgers Newark chapter.
Hey, Jeff.
I'm Nora Gay. I'm from
I'm Callie Hall. I'm from University of
I'm Matthew Myers. I'm president of the Baylor Law Chapter.
John Andrew, University of Tulsa.
Christopher Black, University of Virginia.
Hi, Don Dory, Georgetown. John Heineman, University of Texas.
Joe Bostic, University of Illinois.
Anderson Chang, University of North Carolina.
Erin Flynn, Southwestern. I'm Yujin from Cornell.
Matthew Cummins from University of Houston. Russian Frida, University of Kansas.
Sean Hilo from California Western in San Diego.
Oscar William and Mary. Becca Favrat from University of Michigan.
Michael Klinger from UC Irvine.
Matthew Lanka, University of Stanford.
Derek Klinger, Ohio State.
Matt Hinton from Stanford.
Nate Mensa from American University.
Wilson Tom from Lewis and Clark.
Brendan Cohen from Stanford.
All right. Thank you guys for coming.
We'll see you at the next panel.